Martin writes into the ANC Facebook group, "What I can't do is hear Japanese. I've tried Japanese websites, Japanese TV with subtitles, and I've now hired a native speaker to talk at me for an hour a week. All I get is a string of syllables that I can't extract words from. I just can't get over this. I'm getting very demoralised and on the verge of giving up. Did you experience this block, and how did you get past it?" And then several people have posted some very kind and useful comments with suggestion about using different apps and different courses. I kind of spent quite a lot of time thinking about this and trying to work out what changed in me from arriving in Japan and realising that all of the work that I'd done previously absolutely was of no use to me in a working context, where I would also get people just talking at me for whole half-hour briefings, and I was not really able to understand very much about it. To a point about 6 to 8 months later, where my brain rewired itself slightly, and I was able to understand what people were saying, and I could have a proper conversation. Now, that's obviously not something you can just dive into in order to learn the language, and there must be another way through this. So I thought a lot about what Martin posted, and about learning styles and about the different things that you can do. The thing that did occur to me was this idea that when we are competent readers of written language, we don't really read every single letter in a word and then read every single word in a sentence, but what we're actually looking at is we're recognizing shapes, the shape of a word, rather than reading individual letters. And this has been kind of proven by a lot of internet memes where you see a string of text where the letters have been changed around or changed for different letters, and you can still basically read the sentence. It's just that the spellings are all incorrect or with inverted letter positions. So what we're actually doing is shape recognition when we're reading. And I think, and I've got no evidence or study to prove this, but I think the same thing happens when you listen. So when you're doing oral understanding as well, is that you're not listening to every single sound in a sentence and forming a kind of written sentence in your head. You're hearing, firstly you're hearing the sound of a word, and then you basically, if you're a very competent speaker, if it's your first language, I'm pretty sure that you hear really just the shape of the sentence, the kind of rough shape of it, rather than a structuring of every single word within the sentence. And of course body language helps to enforce this, so does tone of voice, the timing of the sentence as well. These all helps to understand, to immediately kind of program what the person's saying, what you're hearing, and then convert that into some sort of meaning. So I'm not sure this is going to directly help you right now, Martin, but I think rather than trying to spend a huge amount of time dedicated to the like the quantum side of the language, like the learning how to write the letters, and then trying to sort of understand exactly all the kind of words, it's really to start to think about what typical sentences you hear. So I think the big difference between, for example, studying Japanese and then being in Japan and having a sentence thrown at you is that context is everything. And for example, if I go into a shop and the shop assistant comes up to me and says, "Can I help you?" then I'm not going to then sort of sit back for a second and think, "What did she just say?" I can be pretty sure that I know that I hear the sort of key words, and I hear that there's a ka at the end to make it, and a rising intonation to make it into a sentence, into a question. And she's probably saying, or he or she is probably saying, "Can I help you with anything?" And that's really kind of can be imprinted across all sentences, really. When I bump into somebody I know, then they're probably going to say, "Hello, how are you?" And there's, as you probably know, there's various ways of saying, "How are you? How's it going? How are things? What's up?" You don't need to kind of analyze the words in every one of these sentences. You kind of get the gist from the context. And I'm pretty sure now that that's where I am as well with Japanese, is that most of the time, especially if I've spent more than a week there, I'm kind of understanding by automatic response really. I'm not analysing every single sound within the sentence. I can get the gist of what's being said. So maybe I just mean this as a way of hoping that you'll keep spirited with your study. But I just think that learning Japanese is quite different to actually having it in context. You might find if you actually went on holiday to Japan now, in some instances you'll be really, really happy that you can understand what's being said to you, and then after a couple of days you'll be able to provide a good response without thinking about it too much. Other cases you'll be in situations where somebody will say something, you'll understand absolutely nothing about what they've said. I get this situation as well when I'm doing translation at seminars. Depending on the person, depending on the context, at some points I'll understand 100% of an entire explanation, and at other times I'll understand absolutely zero. It really depends on the person's personal speaking style, and the context, the subject of what's going on. If they choose to use complex words to describe something, and this is kind of why I've always wanted to be focused more on grammar and structure than on pure vocabulary, because I feel at the moment there's very little Japanese grammar that I don't understand. I understand the structure of Japanese language pretty well now, and I've still got thousands and thousands of words to learn, but grammar is, I think, 80 to 90% good for me for everyday language. So maybe it's a good idea to try and get into some situations where you are you know what's going to happen because of the context you're in. So there's quite a few videos we looked at during ANC. I think it was from Shin Nihongo no Kiso videos, which I can link to if they're not already linked on the Facebook group, where one of the foreign students is learning in a context. So they're either in a shop or in a factory or in a cafe or on the bus, and you can kind of understand a lot by the context of what's going on, and you're not then kind of left behind when somebody says something, going right back to word one and slowly trying to comprehend the sentence while the speaker is on sentence number 12, and now you're completely screwed because you can't remember everything that's been said. You're now splitting your brain up into doing some comprehension work here, some listening, and some memorizing what they've said. This is going to be really hard. It's probably going to be better to now focus on learning entire sentences. Start off by learning entire common sentences, and then it becomes much more easy to change the odd word out and be able to kind of think, oh, hang on a second, that person asked me about what I'm wearing, but I don't recognise the thing they said, so I can see where they're pointing and understand they're talking about my shoes, for example. I hope that's useful. I'll try and find some good videos to link towards, and hopefully that will help. So just to summarise, I would recommend studying entire sentences now rather than words or grammar. Okay, cool. Happy New Year.